A while ago, I did a video on the top 5 most satisfying deaths on Game of Thrones. There were so many to choose from that I had many comments on the ones that people thought should have been included. Game of Thrones was known for its death and strife, but it was most known for killing our favorites. When the Battle of Winterfell happened, people were expecting a bloodbath of their favorites, and we're surprised at the amount of people who survived. Today, I'm going to talk about the top 5 most heartbreaking deaths on Game of Thrones. Number 5, the Sept of Baelor. Okay, this was a hard one. I actually had my top 4 picked out immediately as soon as I thought of the topic, but I couldn't decide on what number 5 should be. I eventually picked the Sept of Baelor because every other heartbreaking death on my list had a major effect on the plot of the show. And the Sept of Baelor definitely fit that criteria. So it all started with Cersei deciding she wanted to get rid of her daughter-in-law, Margaery Tyrell. She was jealous of her because Margaery was younger, more beautiful, and beloved by the people of King's Landing. And she definitely didn't like the fact that Margaery could control her son Tommen and encouraged him to send Cersei back to Casterly Rock. So Cersei met with a growing religious cult, the Sparrows, and gave them the power to punish people for their religious crimes, knowing that they would immediately target her daughter-in-law and her daughter-in-law's brother because he was gay. What she forgot was that the whole world knew by then that she had an incestuous relationship with her brother and that all of her children were by him. So she was arrested too.
And he has much to say about you.
You will order her to let me go. I am the queen! I am the queen! I've lost your mind!
Eventually, she was let go, but she, Margaery, and Margaery's brother Loras had to appear at a trial at the Sept of Baelor to confess their crimes. All of the Sparrows, including the High Sparrow, was there. Margaery, her brother, and her father were there, and probably other members of the Tyrell family. Cersei kept her son Tommen from attending, then blew up the Sept. She was so proud of herself for getting rid of her enemies. But when the Sept blew up, poor Tommen unalived himself for failing to protect his wife. I was talking to my sister who had never seen the show and was explaining the situation of Cersei being so proud of herself for ending a situation that she created when it hit me. Cersei is just like some people who will remain nameless, who brought their own suffering onto themselves. She empowered the High Sparrow so that he could get rid of her enemies, and then he turned on her. And he told her exactly what he was going to do.
An army that defends the bodies and souls of the common people.
An army in service to the gods themselves. And to you, of course. Too often the wicked are the wealthiest, beyond the reach of justice. The king himself cannot always punish those who deserve it most.
All sinners are equal before the gods.
But she kept thinking about how it would affect her enemies and didn't think about how it would affect herself. Number 4, the Viper. Oberyn Martell came on to Game of Thrones in season 4 and quickly became a favorite. He was charming, clever, and apparently very lethal. We, of course, didn't see how lethal he was until the very end, but his reputation preceded him. The Lannisters were afraid of him.
Why did you come to King's Landing, Prince Oberyn?
Especially because they were indirectly responsible for the death of his beloved sister, Elia Martell.
That started a war, and the war ended right here, when your father's army took the city.
Wasn't actually.
They butchered those children.
The Lannisters had sat out most of Robert's rebellion until it became clear that Robert was going to win. At that moment, they turned on the Targaryens and sent Gregor Clegane after them.
My nephew and niece carved them up and wrapped them in Lannister cloaks. And my sister, you know what they did to her? But what I keep hearing is that Gregor Clegane the Mountain raped Elia and split her in half with his great sword.
Elia was married to Rhaegar Targaryen, so Gregor raped and unalived her, as well as her very young children. We learned from Prince Oberyn that the Martells had sought to marry Prince Oberyn and Ilya to Cersei and Jaime Lannister.
Our father brought me and my sister Elia with him on a visit to Casterly Rock. My first time away from Dorne.
But Tywin wanted to marry his precious little daughter to Prince Rhaegar, so he turned the Martells down. The Martells were offended by Tywin's treatment and managed to marry off Ilya to Rhaegar before Tywin could make a match. So I could believe that Tywin purposely sent Gregor to Ilya as payback, especially since as soon as the dust settled, he took the first chance to marry his daughter to the new king, Robert. So Prince Oberyn didn't come to King's Landing for Joffrey's marriage, he came for revenge.
If the mountain killed my sister, your father gave the order. Tell your father I'm here, and tell him the Lannisters are the only ones who pay their debts.
The Lannisters knew it, and they knew they deserved it. So after Joffrey was unalived at his own wedding, and his uncle Tyrion, the only good Lannister, was put on trial for it, when Tyrion called for a trial by combat, which he had succeeded with before, Prince Oberyn offered to be his champion.
I want to bring those who have wronged me to justice, and all those who have wronged me are right here. I will begin with Sir Gregor Clegane, who killed my sister's children and then raped her with their blood still on his hands before killing her too. I will be your champion.
Especially since Cersei had chosen Gregor Clegane to be her champion. Now, if you haven't seen the show, watch it. It's a masterpiece for the first few seasons. But Gregor Clegane's nickname was the Mountain That Rides because he was that big.
Who's that? Sir Gregor Clegane. They call him the Mountain.
And Prince Oberyn was a slim little thing, but they didn't call him the Viper for nothing. He managed to get the upper hand on the Mountain because he was quick, lethal, and the tip of his spear was poison. Oberyn could have just ended the Mountain, but he wanted the Mountain to admit to what he did to his sister and her children.
Say it. You raped her! You murdered her! You killed her children.
Which gave the Mountain a chance to squash his head like a watermelon. Don't worry, I won't include that clip. To this day, I cannot watch it, and I'm sure I screamed just as loudly as his mistress, Valeria Sand. Number 3, Ned Stark. You would think this would be number 1 because this was the death that let all of us viewers know that Game of Thrones did not come to play. See, before Ned Stark's death, television had certain rules. Like if you were a main character or the main character, you just couldn't die. They would tease their death, have many near-death experiences where the character was saved at the last moment. But never in television have they taken a character who was the moral center of the show and cruelly unalived him. But once that happened, it was like the gloves were off. Any character could get it. No one was safe. We were even lulled into a false sense of security when Ned's son Bran was pushed off a tower in the first episode. The fall should have killed him. Instead, it just put him in a coma for a few episodes, and he was paralyzed when he finally woke up. So it seemed that horrible things could happen to the characters, but they would be saved from death. Then Ned discovered that all of Cersei's children were fathered by her brother, not by his best friend, the king, Robert.
Lord Oris Baratheon, black of hair. Axel Baratheon, black of hair. Lionel Baratheon, black of hair. Stefan Baratheon, black of hair. Robert Baratheon, black of hair. Joffrey Baratheon, golden head.
Instead of getting his children out of King's Landing immediately and then going to tell Robert, he gave her a chance to leave on her own. Ned should have known better simply because he never trusted the Lannisters since Robert's rebellion, especially since her brother's nickname is the Kingslayer. Jaime had unalived the last king when he was on the king's guard.
Tell me, if I stabbed the Mad King in the belly instead of the back, would you admire me more?
You served him well when serving was safe.
When Ned had arrived at the Red Keep ahead of Robert once the rebellion was over, he found Jaime sitting on the Iron Throne. Nothing in all of his experiences with this trifling-ass family should have let him think that Cersei would run away with her tail between her legs.
The Queen is not the only one who has been watching you closely.
I get that Ned was honorable, but did he have to be stupid as well? He put his whole family in danger by trying to be honorable. So of course, Ned was arrested and put in a dungeon. One daughter held captive to be tortured later. The other managed to escape and become an assassin. At the last moment, he seemed to get a reprieve. He would be sent to the Night's Watch to serve alongside his son, Jon Snow.
If you give her the peace she needs and promise to carry her secret to your grave, I believe she will allow you to take the black and live out your days on the wall with your brother and your bastard son.
But of course, the little sociopath Joffrey had him beheaded anyway. I can't remember, but I was probably screaming when that happened as well. Number 2, the Red Wedding. Oh, this one hurt. It especially hurt because even though we were prepared for anything after Ned's death, we were still lulled into a false sense of security with Ned's son, Robb. Robb had gathered all of his banners together to go free Ned. And when Ned was killed, Robb continued the fight to avenge his father's death and retrieve his sisters. Robb was very young and inexperienced, but he soon made himself a problem for Tywin Lannister. He was in the very peculiar position of losing the war, yet winning every single battle. But even though he was losing the war, winning every single battle that he faced created a legend around him. They started calling him the Young Wolf.
3 victories don't make you a conqueror.
It's better than 3 defeats.
As you can see, nicknames were very important in Westeros. This was a time with no social media. Your nickname was supposed to let people know what they should think of you and also how to treat you. Like, for example, Jaime the Kingslayer. He wasn't to be trusted. The Mountain That Rides, he was to be feared. Then there was his little brother, the Hound. His name had a dual meaning. He was vicious like a hound, but he also followed orders like one. Joffrey treated him like his own personal pet. Robb, being called the Young Wolf, showed that he was young and inexperienced, but he had great potential. But what undid the Young Wolf? What undoes a lot of men at that age? He fell in love and just had to marry this chick, even though he promised Walder Frey that he would marry one of his daughters just so they could cross the twins and get to King's Landing. Now, everyone blames Robb's marriage for his death. It even seemed like I did just now. But when no one takes into consideration, just like Ned didn't consider the fact that the Lannisters was a dishonorable family, so was Walder Frey. Do you think that if Robb would have kept his word and married one of Walder Frey's daughters, that he wouldn't have betrayed Robb to Tywin Lannister? Of course he would have. He had zero scruples and was tired of bowing down to the Tullys anyway. He would have jumped at any chance to take down their family and take Riverrun for himself. So he did. He pretended to forgive Robb and had Robb's uncle, who was Lord of Riverrun, marry one of Walder's daughters. At the wedding, Walder Frey killed everyone there who was allied with the Starks. Now this, I remember. I didn't realize I was screaming until the screen went to black and the credits played. I was glad I was home alone. And number 1, hold the door. I get choked up just thinking about it. I know some people might put the Red Wedding as number 1, especially since it's one of the most famous death scenes in all of Game of Thrones. But I went with Hodor for so many reasons. First of all, no one knew Hodor's name. They just called him Hodor because all he said was Hodor.
Hodor!
Don't, Hodor.
Now, in the books, Nan did say in passing once that Hodor's real name was Walder, but they never explained how he started saying Hodor. I think she even mentioned that he used to talk fine and then just one day all he said was Hodor. Hodor was kept around because he was a gentle giant. They made use of his size and strength, but he had the mentality of a little child. So when Bran and his little brother Rickon had to go on the run, Hodor stayed with Bran because he had to carry Bran around. Eventually, he and Bran met up with 2 children of an ally of Ned Stark's. Their father fought side by side with Ned during Robert's Rebellion. The brother took it upon himself to help Bran reach his destiny in becoming the Three-Eyed Raven, a position we would later learn was important against fighting the White Walkers. They actually make it to the cave of the current Three-Eyed Raven, Brynden Rivers. He takes Bran back in time, where Bran is not only able to see events in the past, he's there in the past as well. He witnesses an event from Robert's Rebellion that had made his father famous. Ned was supposed to have killed this really famous swordsman nicknamed the Sword of the Morning, but in reality, it was the father of the 2 young people with Bran, Howland Reed.
He's better than my father.
Far better.
My father beat him.
Did he?
After he sees this event, he calls out to his father and Ned hears him.
Father!
Which made you wonder, can Bran change the past? Well, you find out when Whites attack the cave and Bran must escape. Now, when the cave was attacked, Bran was in a memory at Winterfell. A young Hodor was there, and this was back when he was able to speak in sentences and interact as a normal child. I think Bran does something, and Hodor in the past sees him. In the present, Mira and Hodor are trying to get an unconscious Bran out of the cave before they're attacked by Whites. He is now being dragged around on a stretcher. Mira drags Bran out of the cave and tells Hodor to hold the door against the Whites trying to get out and attack them.
Hold the door!
Mira screams to Hodor to hold the door over and over again. As Mira is running away, dragging Bran behind her, Hodor tries his best to hold the door shut. They cut between a young Hodor screaming, "Hold the door," over and over again, and present day Hodor holding the door and fighting off the Whites attacking him.
What's this?
Hold the door!
Soon, the Hodor in the past goes from just saying, "Hold the door," to just Hodor.
Hold the door! 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 Hold on! Hold on! Hold on! Hold on!
By the time he is reduced to just saying Hodor over and over again, Hodor in the present is dead.
Hold on!
So it's kind of like Prisoner of Azkaban when they use the time turner to go back in the past and set actions in motion that seem to always happen anyway. Walder became Hodor due to the machinations of someone who wasn't even alive yet. So was Hodor just a trauma response? Or did he die in the present and the past at the same time? Like the lights were on, but nobody was home? I put Hodor at number 1 because his death raised so many questions that were never answered. Plus, it gave rise to a popular statement that was put on t-shirts. Not all heroes wear capes, some just hold the door. Those are my top 5 most heartbreaking deaths on Game of Thrones. Did the ones that broke your heart make the list? Tell me in the comments below. If you enjoy my videos, please support my channel by subscribing or donating through Ko-fi or Cash App. Or you can purchase merch related to my fantasy novel or just buy my fantasy novel, The Fairy Princess. And let's continue the conversation in the Fairy Princess Facebook group. All links in the description. Thanks.